Okay, good morning. We are live on the Stigma-Free Society. We're normally at Thursdays at 2, but we've made a little switch recently just because I'm taking some training. So thank you for joining us. And we are excited to have a great guest this morning. My name is Nisha and I'm your host for Wellness Chats with Nisha. I'm a registered clinical counselor. My background is that I was a teacher. I've taught both elementary and high school. I've worked with the Ministry of Children and Family Development in intake with abused children. Currently, I am working as a director, producer for Human Biography, which is a company my husband and I co-founded. So lots of different experience. And I'm your host for Wellness Chats with Nisha. It's every Thursday, normally at 2, but the next few weeks it will be at 11 a.m. as I'm taking a course on heart-centered connection and community, which I'm pretty excited about. So I'd love to just let you know that this is a time that people are going through a lot of transition, and we might be experiencing joy, but we might be experiencing stress or anxiety. And I just wanted you to know that, if you start to feel anything that, is overwhelming, please turn off this live broadcast and contact our first responders who can give you support that you need because they do amazing work. And just wanted to introduce our first guest, our main guest today, Chris Forster. And here he is.
Hello.
Good morning, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
Amazing. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's a nice balmy day here in Victoria, and we're just getting the day started.
Fantastic. Well, Victoria must be great right now. I wish I was there, but it's so I've just got little kids running around in the background here. So I want to introduce Chris. Chris brings almost 15 years experience working in mental health and housing to his position as executive director at Connections Place. His passion for community engagement and building organizational culture through values-based leadership, combined with his belief in the transformational power of psychosocial rehabilitation and peer-based initiatives, make him very excited for his new role in establishing and leading Greater Victoria's first accredited clubhouse. Fantastic, Chris. So great bio.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris, maybe you could tell us a bit about, how did you even get involved in this important work that you're doing with mental health and housing?
So as you mentioned, I have about 15 years in the nonprofit world, but my experience started a little differently and a little bit in a unique way prior to that. 3 years earlier, I had been working as I was going to school, working on my BA. I needed a job, and I found myself in this store security position. So I came face to face with folks who were often shoplifting, and it was just a very odd job for me. But I really loved the connection, and I learned so much about why people, were motivated to do the things they did. And often it was just about they were hungry, but often there was underlying, addiction issues, underlying mental health issues, poverty issues. And so I quickly transitioned out of that work. It was never going to be what suited me. But because of that work, I then found myself working for Victoria City Police Department as a jail guard for about 2 years, a year and a half. And that really brought me face to face with the suffering that people experience due to mental health and addictions. I called that position the empathy grinder by the time I was done with it. It was really hard to Sorry?
What was it? What did you call it? The empathy?
The empathy grinder.
So, grinder.
And it was really hard. It was really hard to be down there, see that suffering. But what it really highlighted was just this redundant, cyclical nature that was not solution based, right? The same folks would be arrested for the same issues over and over again. And what I really wanted to do was work with people. So it was a really big motivating factor in my life to change what I was doing and really focus on going back to school, finishing my degree, getting into the support work field. And then from there, I slowly built my career. I started just working with a lot of small support organizations here in town in Victoria. I was given a job with Victoria Youth Empowerment Society. Given I was hired for a job with them to work specifically with a program with youth and high-risk youth. And that transitioned into us opening what was called the Transitional Living Facility and Youth Housing Program, which was operated out of a downtown bed and breakfast that we had renovated and converted into housing. So that was like my really first taste of the power of what housing can do for people. And it was amazing. Youth would come back, day after day. We'd build trust with them, and a year later, the same youth that would have been bounced from maybe another living facility or their homes or whatever because of their behavior, but their mental health and whatever else they were suffering with, still came back, right? So that program was dissolved just due to funding. I went on EI for a little bit. I went back to school and just did a basic mental health and addiction certificate because it was paid for by the government, and that's what you do when when you're able to do so. And it got me in contact with the next agency that I worked for 10 years, which was Pacifica Housing, which is basically the South Island's largest housing provider. And then I worked in the Downtown Outreach Services Department with them and ended my career with 4 years of managing several housing outreach programs, a program known as Streets to Homes that was brought into Victoria from back east, which matches people who are living with mental health and addictions to rental subsidies and support, and then living in the private market. I had 19 staff at the time. We had well over 300 people on subsidies. We had just an army of caseworkers. So I built my career through that. And all along, it was always working with mental health, always working with addictions, and always just building the skills to be able to connect with people, basically. And when I look back at that time and people say, what do you remember most from those years? Came to where I'm at now, it was just relationships and connections, So I think it's really fortuitous that I came to work at a place called Connections Place as their ED, and I'm just really excited to be here and put our message forward and put our work forward in the community.
It's really important work, and I think something you just said really touched me, that that idea of people, like what you learned was the importance of like what housing can make in people's lives.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we might take that for granted.
Absolutely.
That, we have a house, we have a couch, we have a TV, we have a place to like lie down. But that's not the case for everyone.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Especially here in Victoria and with COVID-19 in our environment, it's incredibly challenging for folks to find appropriate and adequate housing or shelter these days.
What impact is COVID having on people maybe having access to housing? And I don't know what the setups would normally be, but there must be some kind of impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if we could look back at how it all rolled out here in town, I mean, the first thing that happened was a huge reduction in the accessibility to services. So where folks would be able to, go to a drop-in area or go to an area that had a housing program associated, they were no longer able even to connect with people that would be able to work with them to find housing.
Kind of shut down.
It just shut down, right? So access was so limited, and that resulted in folks basically scrambling to find safe places to live. And then our community's response to that was trying to get people into camps and into parks where they could have services brought to them that were so desperately needed. And then from there. Yeah, and then from there, 5 hotels were bought and re-inhabited with people from our camps locally. So we've rehoused in town about 387, I'll just throw that number out there, people without homes into temporary and permanent housing. So So,
Wow, that's huge.
yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
Especially if you think of like one person, if we think about the person and the change that's made in that one person's life,
Absolutely.
then 2, then 3, then 372,
Mm-hmm.
really saved a lot of people in many ways, right? Like that.
Absolutely.
Have a safe place to be, and
Right.
it's amazing.
Yeah, and moved into communities too, and I think one last piece on housing is that, it's funny, it's the power of housing is so fundamental in the change process in a person's life. But we also have to realize that people aren't homeless or without homes because they don't have a home. It's because of the issues that surround them, right? So getting into housing was critical, and then having those supports and having those places to build those functional, healthy connections and ways to access the services they need is what keep people there, right? And that's what's so important about like this collaborative social network that we built in our community, and often what organizations like Connections Place give, right? They give that other layer, that place for people to come and belong to and have community that is that then builds a wellness in their lives, right? And builds that sense of belonging, so yeah.
I'm taking this training right now, and it's all about connecting through your heart, but also through community. Community building is so important for us to feel heard and seen and valued and loved.
Absolutely.
So how fantastic that this not only gives people a place to live, but also a place to create community. To get to know people, to like see people, to have people in your corner.
Mm-hmm.
I think really have a huge impact on how we feel day to day.
Absolutely, yeah.
And do you see those changes? Like, do you see that when you've worked with people and provided this type of support? Maybe give us an example of something or a time when you've seen this really like help people or turn things around for people.
Yeah, for sure. I can give you two examples. I'll give you one from my past and one current one. I was working with a gentleman who had been without a home for quite some time, and suffering from addictions and underlying mental health and PTSD. And he had just chosen to basically unplug from society and community, and was living in a park. He wasn't connected to disability payments or income assistance. And what we did is we just slowly built that relationship back with him, going to meet him where he's at, where he was currently sheltering, and then slowly drawing him into services and showing him that it's safe for him to connect with us. And we show that by, being predictable, being there, being able to meet him where he's at. And he got onto PWD. He got into supportive housing in town, and he currently remains housed 5 years later. And I just remember, like, the points are, it's like trust, right? It's like once we have developed trust with the people that we're working with, and that's that's our job as workers to do as well, to show up day in and day out and be predictable and be reliable for these folks that we're reaching out to. And I still see him today, and we'll be walking down the street and he'll holler at me, and if there were a problem, he would know that we could still connect with him.
So Chris, like when you talk about building that trust with people,
Yeah.
what are people fearful of?
Oh, so many things. I think, we all have life experiences. We all have, positive and negative life experiences. A lot of people have significant traumas that they've experienced in their lives that, definitely prevent them from being able to lean into a trusting relationship because they've never had that, or they've had relationships that have been really burned. So it's about being predictable. It's about doing what you say you're going to do. It's about, showing up for folks day in and day out, and being able to hold space in ways that are, person-centered, but like both filled with respect and dignity for yourself and the other, right? So, being able to hold boundaries. And when I say boundaries are just that ability to respect yourself in relationship to another person, right? And I think that people just, if you're able to do that, if you've done your own self-work on that, you're able to show up in a way that people can then find predictable and will like more likely be able to put trust in you as you move forward, right? So in that relationship building, yeah.
super important. And then when you're helping find like housing for people, what are some of the some of your clients, like what are some of the maybe reasons why people don't have housing?
Yeah, a myriad of reasons. I think, if we were to look at them, I think, with the great work of Gabor Mate, everything really relates back to trauma in so many ways, right? Or institutional poverty or intergenerational poverty or stigma. A lot of the folks that we work with have just had very traumatic lives, experiences in their lives. A lot of them have very profound mental health challenges that they've faced. And that's been impacted by obviously addiction issues, and we know addiction issues is really a way of medicating a lot of the symptoms that people feel. And then it's years of that are compounded, and so it's hard to often find a place for a person and find a landlord that's willing to see through a person's exterior into what their potential could be. And so, it's a lot of relationship building, both with the client or member that you're working with and the landlord. And the landlord wants to have that trusting relationship too, that you as the support worker are going to be able to show up even when needed, right? So, so stigma, how someone might present, and people if people who have been without homes for long enough, it takes time to adjust, right? Your community was the street, right? Or the park or wherever you lived, and now you're expected to live within society in this model, right? And that's a tough transition. So, it takes a while to readjust. Yeah,
it would be a very actually tough transition, I would think, right?
Yeah.
To going from like looking out for yourself on the street
Mm-hmm.
to now, being in a home, caring for the home.
Mm-hmm.
Working within a different set of rules, I would think.
Absolutely. And just the felt experience of your nervous system, being so hypervigilant where you used to survive to then coming into a very quiet place that's almost too quiet, and almost too safe, right? So it takes like, there's such an adjustment on many different levels, right? Yeah.
That's fascinating to think about, actually.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when it's too quiet, people can really get into their own heads.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
And even, it takes work. It's taken work for me to, when it's quiet, what is your heart telling you? What is your mind telling you? What is your soul telling you?
Absolutely.
If you don't have the resources to like work through that stuff, it can be really hard to be in a quiet place.
Absolutely. And I think that is the other side. So that is why community and wraparound supports and connections are so important for folks who are moving into homes, right? So that they are able to connect with people who have been through the process before. They're able to connect with people who can help them navigate through the services that they need and help them through that transition. Because when it's so quiet, the voices are louder, right? Or whatever it is that you've experienced is louder, and often the way to deal with that is through self-medication, right? Which is addiction, substances, and so when we can start mitigating some of that negative adjustment with community and having places for people to go during the day so that they can work through that process, they're so much more successful in a long-term solution, right? So yeah.
So it's just a really big picture, actually. This is not just about placing a person in a home.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how do you help that person be successful in that home? How do you help them navigate those seas? How do you, like you said, help them with what do they do during the day so that they feel good about being in that home, that they want to be there?
Absolutely. That's right.
It's and that self-medicating, it's a huge, predicament, because to self-medicate is to help oneself in some ways. People might be thinking because they're quieting down those voices or dulling that pain, but then it's affecting their whole life in other ways.
Absolutely.
So then you must be dealing and doing work with, substance abuse centers to help people.
Yep. And that's where it's like, as you mentioned, it's a complex network of support that's necessary, right? You know, and maybe I'll take the conversation and focus it into Connections Place here a little bit as well, right? You know, and that's why places like Connections Place, where I currently work, are so important for people to be able to access, because they gives them that space that's comprehensive and service delivery, that offers like systems navigation, allows them to connect with a worker who can connect them to like an addiction service, can get them connected to counseling. You know, we're very non-clinical here. We're really like community based, and just about like being welcoming and safe and inclusive. But it's a great place to start, right? You know, and it allows a person to say, hey, I know that there's a place that I can go tomorrow, that I can connect with other people, I can get out of my head, I can have a cup of coffee. You know, it's a safe space. And I can also work on, you know, some of the programming that they offer there too, which is the work order day. And yeah, and you know, part of our conversation today was going to be around psychosocial rehabilitation, sorry. And this is so great, right? So you take a person who may have been unhoused into housing, we wrap them with support. We offer opportunities to connect into programming and being part of community, which is essential to building that long-term wellness. And through that process at Connections Place, through the Clubhouse model, we offer them the ability to engage in the work order day, where they're able to take place in the necessary jobs and work of the Clubhouse. You know, and just to, in my segue here, you know, our Clubhouse is run with a model that we're intentionally understaffed, so that we need the members who show up to actually do work with us to get the day's work done. And what a great way to build purpose and meaning, and that need to be needed, right? You know, it's so essential to us as humans to feel the need from others, right, and be part of that working community. So, you know, and then we have this reaffirming cycle of success in people's lives, or wellness, to build towards success. You know?
That makes me so happy, because I think that is just like I'm crying, but it makes me happy. It's such a huge part of it, you know, that people feel successful, that they feel that they're contributing to something that matters.
Absolutely, you know? Right?
And then that gives self-confidence.
Yeah.
And when you build your self-confidence, then you feel better, then you feel like you want to be connected to community, you want to be connected to others, you have something to contribute.
Absolutely.
Amazing that you do that.
A quick learner, that is exactly the outcome of our model, right? You know, all those pieces, you know, confidence, self-esteem, slowly reintegrating into society, so that you actually feel like you're a contributing member. So you feel welcomed and wanted, and you want to be part of that, right? You know, and
that it's effective. I'm sure you're seeing.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's things that are working in that psychosocial rehabilitation.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, here at Connections Place, we have 166 members. We've been open just over a year, and our membership's growing every day. We're one of the few services that reopened post-COVID. We've been open since June 8th. You know, obviously with service modifications for all the enhanced safety necessities that we had to put forward. But it's been amazing. Our members are so happy to be back. It's so good to see people face to face again, you know, even through a face mask, right? But you know, but it is, again, it's that reinforcing cycle of connection, coming to a place that offers that predictable level of support, and gives people things to do and connect with, which are necessary, right? You know, and we've seen great numbers. We're jam-packed every day. We ask that people schedule in advance. We only have a certain amount of occupancy that we can allow in at a time, and it's all full. So it's really exciting, right? And it's all based on that PSR, that psychosocial rehabilitation model, right? You know.
Wow. And so the psychosocial rehabilitation model, that is like a Connections Place kind of standard. Is that where you're operating from as a group?
For sure. If I can speak to that really briefly here. So Connections Place is part of Clubhouse International. Clubhouse International was founded in 1948 in New York City in the first clubhouse known as Fountain House, which is still operational today. It was essentially built from psychiatric patients who had been released into community who were co-supporting themselves. So, we talk about people with lived experience or peer-based solutions. Like this was happening in 1948, right? So it's built into the fabric of our 37 standards of accreditation. And it's really grown since then. And we have, well over 300 clubhouses worldwide now. The model's been adopted as an evidence-based way to help folks, reintegrate, build wellness in their lives, purpose, meaningful connection, and have those healthy outcomes in terms of staying out of hospitals, staying out of emergency services, less incarceration, reduced addiction, and it's been great. So in Victoria here, we're working towards accreditation, and one of those questions that you had sent me as a possible one that we would have is like, what are you excited about? I'm really excited about the possibility of Victoria's Connections Place Clubhouse being the first fully accredited clubhouse, which would mean that we have comprehensive service delivery, that we're offering housing, systems navigation, employment assistance, education, all the things that really wrap into the psychosocial rehabilitation model in one building, right? And again, there's been such a groundswell of work that preceded Connections Place. Here in Victoria, our founder, Jackie Powell, had an advocacy group of parents with children who were experiencing profound mental health. And she had found the clubhouse model, brought it into Victoria, slowly built it. We have a lot of interest, a lot of support in the community for our model and for the work we're doing. And so moving forward, we're just waiting for it to expand, right? Slowly waiting for it to expand now, bit by bit, as there's only so much room to move with COVID at the moment, but the sky's the limit. So yeah.
Oh, it's phenomenal, and it's great to know that there's this kind of an international connection.
Absolutely.
Connections. Yeah. And so, do you find that you connect with the other parts of the organization?
That is the beautiful part of Clubhouse International. It is so based and built around the building success into other models. So we have a mentor clubhouse in Richmond, BC called Pathways that's been around for about 35 years. They are so awesome, so successful. They moved from a clubhouse in just sort of like a residential home into this multi-story, purpose-built building that has the clubhouse built into it, 5 other nonprofits, 3 levels of government that help create it, and 127 units of inclusive supportive housing above it. Like it is the vision of what can be done when communities collaborate to build these really successful models. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, we had the opportunity to interview them.
Oh, great.
Previously. It's just so positive.
Absolutely.
So positive to know that people have places to go and they have support and they can feel connected to something.
For sure.
And people are welcoming them, as you said, with a smile on their face and offering a coffee. And it's honestly, it's those little things in life that make people feel good.
Totally. And and we welcome it in a way that we're not connected to clinical support, so we're not connected to the mental health services. We are a standalone organization. We're completely egalitarian and consensus based. Our members get to choose what kind of programming they're taking place in, right? So
program. It's not anything that they're saying like, hey, you have to be in this program.
Exactly.
If you'd like to be welcome.
Yeah. So you walk in the door and you're met as an equal, right? And your voice is welcomed and considered in all the decisions of the clubhouse. So great model built on the strengths of the individuals who attend and really just helps with community and wellness to enhance those positive outcomes that we're all looking for, right? So yeah.
That's amazing, Chris. I want to say thank you so much for sharing what the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
The Shared Connections place. It's just fantastic. It's so positive, and it's cool to hear what's going on in Victoria, you know, that it's happening internationally, that this isn't just an idea that's in one place. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That exists throughout the world, and that people are thinking about the importance of having a place to like lie down at night.
Absolutely.
And connect with people. And we just want to say thank you on behalf of the Stigma-Free Society. It's amazing to connect with people doing good work such as yourself. And just thank you for joining us today, everyone who's watched, and know that we will be on again next week, Thursday at 11 a.m. And just want to say thank you to everyone for all your support and for keeping an open mind and talking about things like stigma and how that affects us and how that might impact everything in our lives, including housing. So thanks again, Chris. Have an amazing day.
So great to talk to you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.